Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Catherine Hill. I'm the Associate Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art here at the Georgia Museum of Art, and I'm ecstatic to have our featured guest and photographer, Micah Cash, with us here tonight. Before we begin, I just wanted to make a quick housekeeping note. If you could please double check your phones, iPads, personal devices, anything of the sort, and make sure that the sound is turned all the way down. It'll help us greatly in avoiding any disturbances throughout the conversation. And if you do need to step out for any reason, please feel free to exit out the doors in the back of the auditorium and return when you can. As we begin tonight, I want to extend a thank you to all of the staff members who have worked diligently over the last few months to make our fall exhibitions open for your enjoyment. A considerable thank you to my colleagues Ciel Rodriguez, Callan Steinman, Cassie Hawkins for their continuous support and efforts to make tonight's event possible. I won't be able to thank everyone by name because it truly does take a village to make these things come together, but thank you also to the education and event staff that are here helping tonight. Join us following the talk to celebrate the exhibition Waffle House Vistas, and the reception will feature waffles catered by the one and only Waffle House, with hands-on activities inspired by our fall exhibitions. The Student Night Waffle Party is hosted by the Georgia Museum of Art Student Association with generous support from the UGA Parents Leadership Council. I also want to acknowledge the Bitter Southerner for their support and briefly highlight their contributions to Micah's project early on by publishing 2 volumes of Waffle House Vistas, which we have here in the museum gift shop. If you're interested in getting your hands on in the book, you can find it in the gift shop following the talk. I also just wanted to thank you guys, the audience, for your time and consideration to sit with Micah and myself and the people around you and hold space for conversation and spend time with art, both in this talk and in our galleries following. I hope tonight can be a bit of reprieve, and I think our conversation will also share some hope in illustrating ways that art can bring solace in difficult times, provide a brighter perspective, and be a connective piece in our collective and shared humanity. This month is also the University of Georgia's Spotlight on the Arts, which provides an opportunity to highlight the breadth and excellence of arts education, programming, and scholarship at the university. We are delighted to be participating as part of a month-long sweep of incredible exhibits, events, and we're delighted to be a part of the University of Georgia's signature lecture series tonight. So I'm going to try to keep this very brief because I know we're all here to listen to Micah directly. So I'm going to do a quick exhibition overview and then a short introduction of Micah before handing it off to him. So Waffle House Vistas documents the built and natural environments as seen through the windows of Waffle House restaurants. Captured from locations across the southeastern United States, these images contemplate the physical and social environments and commerce that surround each location of the Southern cultural icon. The natural landscapes beyond the window panes are as diverse as the perspectives and stories of each guest at the tables. Yet the similarities of the restaurant's interiors echo across states and time zones. The images look out from the restaurant's iconic booths, past the signature mid-century pendant lamps, and make viewers newly conscious of buildings so commonplace they often go unseen. Each guest waiting for their hash browns becomes a witness to the intertwined narratives of economic stability, transience, and politics. The familiar, well-worn interiors make us think about what we have in common, yet the differences in environments call to mind the different ways we experience structures built and felt. This photographic inquiry contemplates the threads of poverty, race, and regionalism adjoining those of fast food, economics, and politics. This exhibition is derived from the photo book by the same name, which was published by the Bitter Southerner and has sold over 10,000 copies across 2 editions. The second book expanded by the first by adding over 40 new photographs in December of 2022. This exhibition also premiered here at Georgia with a newly commissioned time-based media component of the series. This video realizes Cash's directive to look up through the prolonged footage of views and sounds from 3 Waffle Houses. The video and its soundscapes disrupt the nostalgia of the still photos, which the audience animates with actual or imagined memories of a Waffle House meal. Instead, they emphasize a long, time-based vision of the surrounding landscape and architecture. And to quote a dear friend to both Micah and I, and our former American art curator, Dr. Jeffrey Richmond Mall, these photographs contemplate rather than walking, or situate rather than walking a mile in someone's shoes. The viewer sits a while in someone else's red-lined booth and sees the world from their place at the table. The photographs and the window panes are like another another camera lens. We look out sometimes at steamy and other times crystal clear windows, as if sometimes daydreaming and other times awoken suddenly to reality. So quickly about Micah. Micah investigates how land use and social history influence cultural geography. Micah Cash uses a visual language of landscapes and architecture across media to explore narratives of utilization, demarcation, and ownership. Micah exhibits in both solo and group exhibitions and has work included in private collections throughout North America and Europe. Cash's monograph, including Waffle House Vistas and Dangerous Waters, a photo essay on the Tennessee Valley Authority, which he'll share more about tonight. Micah received his MFA from the University of Connecticut and his bachelor's degree from the University of South Carolina, and he currently lives and works in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'm going to pass it off to you, Micah, and step off the stage. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you so much, Kate. That was really awesome, everybody. All that stuff she said is great because I don't have to say it again. I can tell other stories. I don't have to get really deep into that work. Also, the joke that has to be said is thank you all so much for letting a Gamecock hang out at UGA. I appreciate it. That's the only time we have to reference it for the rest of the evening. I have my own thoughts about this. I'm going to live with them. Thank you so much for being here on a Thursday evening, and to everybody at the Georgia Museum of Art. The exhibition, if you haven't seen it, is fantastic, and they did that. They took the vision I had created in this project and in this book and translated it to an exhibitable space. And one of the interesting things about this project that we'll talk about is that when I made these photographs, I envisioned them as 36 inches in a museum space. But what happened is the distribution of a photo book came first. And so everybody was introduced to this work either online in tiny little boxes or in a book. Never had we actually printed them 36 inches. And so it was really wonderful to have a team, a curatorial team, a marketing team, an administrative team in this jewel of an institution, see that work and put it on the wall the way I had envisioned it, and really so that you can engage with it. So if you haven't seen it, please go upstairs tonight or come back and take a look at it. So thank you so much to the Georgia Museum of Art. I'm very honored to be here. And this is why you're here, right? You're familiar with this book. If you aren't familiar with it, you can buy a copy across the hall. I'm happy to sign it tonight. Or you could say, I don't like it, and then go home and think about it and buy a copy then and FedEx it to me, and I'll sign it. But truly, in order for us to talk about this book, we need to talk about the process that got me to be in a space to make this work. And briefly, this is an image of me doing something stupid. Don't do that. Don't stand on things and make photographs. You know, bring ladders in your car if you're a photographer. How many people in here are photographers? I mean, there's a lot of students. I love it. How many people are artists, not just photographers? Okay, good. I consider myself a visual artist who just happens to do 95% of his work through photography these days. But when I say I'm a photographer, people think I photograph weddings or babies. I do neither of those things. Don't ask me to come photograph your wedding because it'll just be photographs of trash cans and parking lots. How do I get to my content? So I have this little graph here. So all of the concepts that I spend time making work about in that center triangle, everything leads into it. So, you know, I make work about class, economics, politics, identity, demographics, all these different things lead into the concept of my work. Not every project has all of those things within it, but somehow I'm trying to understand or ask questions about who we are as a community, as a country, as a people, as a region, and then land on a visual metaphor that I can kind of scratch at and ask hard questions. I believe my role is to ask questions, not provide any answers. We're going to do that together through art and through conversation. And all of that is under the umbrella of landscape and architecture. Why do I use landscape and architecture? It's very simple. This is the language we all speak. Yes, it is, some people consider it a very low common denominator, But when we walk around the world, we see what is around us, we interact with what is built, and sometimes that's how we can best understand each other and then ask those questions of why. I used to be a painter. For about 20 years, all I did was make paintings. I did some other 2D work, drawing, printmaking, things like that. And I made, more specifically, abstract and non-objective paintings about myself, about how I felt. I got kind of tired of that. I wanted to make work about us as a society, about people. And landscape was something that I sort of gravitated toward. But I never wanted to make, just beach scenes or just pretty landscape. I wanted it to be sort of within the tradition of landscape work, but not necessarily about conquest or manifest destiny or any of those things that we know about. And I read this essay of Mother Nature and Marlboro Men by Deborah Bright. It is seminal. It is a pillar of landscape photography and truly a pillar of sort of feminist art criticism. And the main thing I took away from that is I absolutely have a responsibility every time I put my eye in the lens finder or make a painting, anytime I use land at all, whether photorealistic or abstract, to understand the social history of that space, the materials, the people that used to live there, that live there now, that might live there, those stories that can all be true simultaneously. Land can be wealth. I can sell it. I can drill it. Land can be home. Land can be something that is very negative, or land is something that's very hopeful. All of those are true simultaneously depending on who's looking at it. So it's my job to represent that and understand it. And that's what Deborah Bright really taught me. And till this day, every time I pick up that camera, I'm thinking about what I am seeing and who has owned it, operated it, and where it might go next. So it's something I do not take lightly. And my first published book, Dangerous Waters, a photo essay on the Tennessee Valley, started in 2013. And I was making work about the Tennessee Valley Authority because I wanted to make a project that talked about sacrifice for the common good. And for those of you who do not know, the Tennessee Valley Authority is a landmark original New Deal project that was started in 1933 that had 3 objectives: power, cheap, available power for the rural South, particularly the 7-state region around Tennessee and the Tennessee Valley, where even in 1933, many of those people did not have power. It also was flood control because it would flood almost every year, so this was a way to control it. And 3, because it's government, you get to regulate interstate commerce up and down the river. So it all worked. And so you had in a government situation people saying, oh, we can do all these things, and of course Roosevelt saying, well, will it help people in 1933? Yeah, it'll help people. All right, let's do it. And so 1.3 million acres were taken through eminent domain. Somewhere between 13,000 to 20,000 people were removed, 95% of them voluntarily, to new places. 20,000 graves relocated because all that land was going to be flooded. And so for me, hydroelectricity became a really big metaphor to talk about a style of government that no longer exists. And why is that? So going to the Tennessee Valley, photographing these dams 4 generations after they had been built, and talking about the narratives in a contemporary discourse. And something interesting happened. I wanted to make big paintings about dams. I spent 2 weeks out in Tennessee making reference photographs, and I was not happy with what I was seeing. I didn't know how to paint it because painting was about me and how I felt about things. Painting was not about how you felt about things. And so I'm standing on the top of Norris Dam, which is about 45 minutes away from Knoxville, and I look down and I'm holding a camera. And I go, well, let's try it. And I made this image. So this was the first honest-to-goodness, self-identified photograph as a piece of art I ever made. And I thought about how that kind of worked. Maybe this is a way I can talk about other people, but I'm in there, but it's about all of us. And so I started making photographs, and that turned into a project. And from 2013 to 2016, I made images around the Tennessee Valley. And I positioned myself as the artist, as someone who had the responsibility of telling all those stories. So the book has about 70 photographs in it, and like a 20,000-word essay that I had to write because the publisher said I should do it because there's no TVA scholars anymore, and everyone who still exists has already had their own book. So I said, okay, I'll write 20,000 words. And it was important for me to tell those different stories. So here on the left, we have an image where these two fishermen are Saturday morning down on the Holston River, fishing, recreating, enjoying this space in a contemporary discourse the way it has been redesigned as a space for recreation and outdoor activity. On the right, we have an image where conceptually I have blocked the vista. I'm showing you these different icons and signifiers of industry and power, and it sort of blocks you from a way to say, look what you've done to my river. I don't even want to go to this river. Both of these things are true, even 4 generations later. In many cases, the conversation around TVA is much more calcified 4 generations later because the organization has done a lot of bad things in those generations that sort of went counter to what it was founded for, and we change as a society. We change in a relationship to government. So I felt it was my duty to do that, to switch my lens and to switch my positioning and tell different stories as sort of an arbiter, just sort of like this story, this story. So I published the book in 2017, and I'm really happy with it. You know, it's my first book. You're a photographer, like that's the thing you've always wanted your whole life, right? We can have that discussion, whatever. And I'm on a mini book tour where I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I gave a book signing and lecture to like 3 people. And I was on my way home. There's not a big market for hydroelectric photograph books, in case you thought. No. I love that book. I'm still very proud of that project. I think it actually speaks way more now, almost 10 years later. But not a huge market for it. And I was on my way home, and I stopped at a Waffle House. And I was in self-promo mode, right? Like, you got to hustle yourself. So I sit down at this Waffle House, I order my breakfast, I stick my book up there, and I make a post on Instagram that says, hey, if you like Waffle House, you're going to love Dangerous Waters. To like my 200 followers, right? Like, they already bought the book because they're my followers. But I did it. This is the picture from the post. And then I got back in the car, and I thought about it for 3 months. What did that mean? Why did I think that somebody who likes Waffle House is also interested in conversations about New Deal progressivism and hydroelectricity? But there was something in there about the working class, about Southern regionalism, about the hardworking people of the Tennessee Valley and what they've had to go through over the years. So like maybe there's something in there. 3 months later, I'm out in Myrtle Beach making photographs for a project that didn't work. I still haven't resolved. I don't know how it's going to happen. One day I'll make work about Myrtle Beach, but it's never happening right now because nothing's coming together. So I'm sad, distraught. I just spent a week in Myrtle Beach making a bunch of bad photographs. And I'm driving home, and I stop at a Waffle House again. This time I look up, and I look out. And I go, huh. So this was made with my iPhone. There's a BB&T. There's a CVS. Over here, off frame, there is a Dollar General and a payday loan lender. And I said, wow, wonder how many Waffle Houses are next to a Dollar General. That's interesting. And so a normal person, a normal academic person would look at some data, would look at some maps, but I'm an artist. I don't do normal things. Instead, I get in my car and I drive to every Waffle House within an hour radius of Charlotte, North Carolina, to see whether or not they're next to a Dollar General, which is perfect because Dollar General, I think, was like based in Charlotte or whatever. I'm like, this is gonna be great. Not that many. So a hypothesis that didn't stack up. But it was interesting that I had that stereotypical idea of, oh, maybe there's a market share of people that have to shop at a Dollar General and eat at a Waffle House. That's junk, right? Like, I don't even know why I thought that, but like stereotypes are very prominent when you think about Waffle House. And so I did that. I started going to Waffle Houses. And I was making bad photographs because I was photographing the parking lots. So I would sit in the Waffle House, and I would get out my camera, and I would zoom into the parking lot, and I'd photograph it. And I'd be like, yeah, this is America. They were not good. This wasn't working. And to put this in context, I had spent 3 years making a body of work that I just published, and I wanted a palate cleanser. I wanted something quick and easy and simple to talk about some of these issues I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. And those photos weren't working. And so what I did in May of 2018, last day of class, I was teaching. And yes, for professors, the last day of class is just as great as for students. And so I was like ready to go. I was out the door, on my way to class. I had extra time. So I stopped at a Waffle House on the way to class. I took my gear with me. I sat down like I did every time, photographing the parking lot. I was like, oh, look at this knife and fork restaurant. Oh, this screams rural North Carolina. And it wasn't working. And I just thought, what if I pull it in? And I did. I just pulled in the lens because I was using a 24-70, just pulled it in. Made that image right here. This is the first photograph from the project. And I was like, that's it. Because now I'm telling you where I am. And that matters. Waffle House now matters. And so now the parking lot has context, and the knife and fork has context. And all of the things I was trying to discuss about the working class and about economic precarity and all these other things, it matters because I'm telling you in the Waffle House. And so I love this image because it's the first one. I don't think I've ever sold a print of this. People all like other ones, but I really like it. And so I started doing this. And this is the part of the artist talk where I do have to state, Waffle House Vistas, y'all, is not about Waffle House. It's about economics. You guys know this because none of y'all were shocked. You're like, yeah, we've seen the show, man. We get it. Like, we are taking our Thursday night to come listen to you. But it is about economic precarity. Waffle House Vistas is about that American style of poverty where we are all 1 or 2 paychecks away from financial ruin, and we have to work harder to get ahead. And no matter how hard we work, it's almost impossible to get ahead. I was feeling that. I was working 3 jobs at the time, all in the arts nonprofit space, like the space I wanted to be in. I could barely pay my bills, barely buy diapers for my kid, all those things. And so I was feeling this and living this. And I was looking for a way to talk about it. Not in a negative way, not in an exploitative way, but just a way that acknowledges that this is hard. We work hard in this country, and it's hard to get ahead. Let's talk about it. So I started making these photographs. It worked. So I started going to these Waffle Houses. This one at Avondale Estates was the very first Waffle House. The backstory behind this is I was on my way to a conference, because back then I was still in the academic world, and in Birmingham. And so I set up a tour of the space, so you can go tour it. It's really nice. And they do a little thing. It used to be a Chinese restaurant. They bought it back, and they made it look like it first did. So it's sort of like a staged Waffle House. You can't eat there. But what's interesting is at this time, the project was getting mature enough that I was sharing 1 image every Friday on social media. I would put it on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and I would just say, Store 1, Avondale Estates, Georgia, hashtag Waffle House Vistas. That's all I would say. It took my friends about 3 months to realize I was making art. They were like, oh, we were kind of worried about you, man. You're going to a lot of Waffle Houses. And then they got it. And what's interesting is when I went to do this tour, the person who did the tour was the director of public relations for Waffle House HQ corporate. So like, you know, an executive gives the tour. And we're standing there, they had done all the things, and I'm kind of hanging back. And then everyone's left, and he turns to me and goes, will you lock up? I said, what do you mean? He goes, you're going to want to make a photograph, right? He knew who I was, y'all. He had been trolling me on like social media. So like he had seen me come to the tour. He didn't make anything of it, but he's just like, yeah, make your image and then just lock the door. And I did. So there's no booths here. So I had to like pretend I was sitting at the counter, which didn't have seats, you know, and look out the window because in these images, and that's also his truck, by the way. He told me that in an email like months later. In all of these images, I had very strict conceptual rules. I would enter the Waffle House, I would find a place to sit, I would sit down, and then I would make images from only where I was. And I would do the whole, you know, but I wasn't gonna move, but I would do the whole thing. I'd be like, this vista, this vista, this vista, this vista. I would always order something in the mornings. It would be a full breakfast. By noon, it was probably just a slice of toast, and by 3 in the afternoon, it was just coffee. And before you ask, there's no night photos, because at night, you just see my reflection. Some of y'all are photographers in here, you get that, but other people are like, man, like I only go to Waffle House at night. Why aren't there any photos about me? And I'm like, because it would just be an image of me doing this. So, you know, I would stop around dusk, and I did that for every restaurant. Those rules were important, because if I wanted to have a visually conceptual space where every image was the same, and a third of every image shows you where I am in the Waffle House. And we've seen that, right? Inside. That one's different because it's not a real store. Inside. I needed to also treat it conceptually in practice. when I was making the photographs. And so this is the one, it's in the exhibition upstairs. You can see it. It's kind of become the key art for the whole project for a variety of reasons, but it is a lovely photograph, and so that's why I put it in here. And something weird kind of happened. I got really depressed. I was working 3 jobs. I was on the road making these works around my 3 jobs and around a full family life and everything. And this one was made in December of 2018. Again, I wanted a quick project, something palette cleanser, something I can get out there and publish really quickly. And I made this. I texted my buddy Adam, who's a curator in Charlotte, and he had, kind of championed this work early on. So I wasn't talking about it to people. It was just on social, and my friends knew. That was it. I was starting to try to put it in juried shows and get some of that. And I texted him, I was like, dude, I'm going home. This is the last waffle. I'm too depressed. Because I had been in this space and been talking to people in these Waffle Houses about the hardships in their lives, because we all have them, the sacrifices they are making, because we all make them. And I just got to a space like, I'm not a trained social worker, right? I was wearing other people's pain and struggle on top of my own pain and struggle. And so I just had to stop. So I stopped making them. And then in January of 2019, my good friend Dave, who is the creative director, creative editor, and co-founder of The Bitter Southerner, an Athens original, emailed me and said, Mike, it's time. I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, we got to get this out there. Now, truth be told, I had been shopping it to other publishers. In my brain, it was like a boutique art book, right? We're going to print like 200 of these. It'll be fine. It'll be really cute, whatever. And I went to Photo NOLA, which is in New Orleans. It's a big photo festival they do down there. I wasn't doing any like portfolio reviews, but I was showing in that show, the exhibit at the Ogden Museum. And I was showing Waffle House pieces to test them. And I was sitting there with a friend of mine who also was not, he was just there. And we were drinking beers, and we were looking at this big portfolio review, and I'm talking about my struggles trying to get this published. And he goes, Micah, this book is about the people. I said, yeah? He goes, so why would you want to make a photo book for other photographers? It changed my world. Because he was absolutely right. What's the point in making work if I'm not engaging with the people I'm making work about? And so that happened literally like days before Dave emailed me. The universe, he was like, it's time. I'm like, yes, you guys can do this. You have the platform of actual people that care about things in a wider context. And so we published the article in February 2019. It broke their website. It didn't go viral in a way that is bad. It went viral in a way that people shared it. People had thoughts about it. It's still the most read piece they've published. I don't know, maybe one of the ones on Jimmy Carter this past couple weeks, maybe that one broke it. But by the end of that night, we were like, we're making a book. And I already had it in my head because I'd been trying to shop it. And they are an incredible media outfit. They're one of the best in the country. And frankly, I think they're the best photo book publisher in the country. And we can talk about that if you're a photographer. You might be like, what about Radius? What about Aperture? It's an old model. Photo books are changing. Economy is changing. And they understand that a photo book can still be an incredible piece of art within the tradition of photo books, and there's some incredible ones, but that can be in your hands for a price point that you can afford. Not in some limited edition 500 printing that's gonna cost you $600 or that you have to go to a museum to see. It can be in your home and you can live with that work. And I 100% agree with that. So what happened is we published this thing. We spent all of 2019 designing it and getting it ready. It's beautiful. I wake up Christmas morning, my phone is nuts because everybody is tagging me because they got this for Christmas or they gave it to someone for Christmas. And so I'm screen capping all these posts and I'm like, what is happening? I had no idea. And we had to think about that. They weren't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for it. And so this happens. We kind of talk over Christmas break. We're talking in February. We had to reprint the entire edition by February, 2 months. We were out. We had to print it again. And then March happens, and people are at home. And this book is just selling because we can't be in a communal space. We can't be talking to each other. And so we get on Zoom, and I was like, guys, what do we do? Like, I made this entire project by myself, talking to myself. That's how I make art. And suddenly there are thousands of people that want to have this conversation with me. I had no idea they would care. And so I proposed making more photographs, which is something I never do. I do not like to revisit work. Tonight we're going to talk about how I revisited it twice. So the first time was after the pandemic. And so we talked about this, and I said, now that I know people care and that they want to have these conversations about economics and politics and social structures in America with me in these booths, I feel like I should make more and see if they change. And let's do it publicly. And I said, okay, let's try it. So I got my shots. I put posts on Instagram and Twitter. Micah's going to Virginia. What stores do you want him to go to? And people would give me requests. And I'd put them on the list. And I started looking at census data because it was very important to me in the second edition that we had kind of teed up in our brain to have just as many images from high poverty counties in each state, median poverty counties, and low poverty counties. Are they any different, what you see? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But to me, that was important, so that there was a good representation of America, not just the haphazard travels I was going on for the first edition. And so here's one from Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which of course was a request. Everyone loves this one in Pigeon Forge. And it looks like Pigeon Forge. No real surprise there. There's like a nostalgia to that. Here's this image of Gulfport, which is upstairs. I had heard rumors of these Waffle Houses on the beach. I was like, that can't be true. It's true. In Mississippi, right? Go along the Gulf, and there's a bunch of them. And I was like, wow, this is great. And so what we did is I made another 45 images. I actually made more work for the second edition than I did for the first edition. I was in a happier space. People were having that conversation with me online and in person. And we took everything in the first edition and all the new stuff and smashed it together. So we basically, scattered all the photos. That's what I'm doing, right? Smothered it with some new essays, stuck it in this giant book, which we love, and it's truly the resolved version of this project. And I'm not making any more. We're not doing that. And I just saw Bitter Southern today, and I'm like, we're not doing that. Like, it's like maybe 20-year anniversary or something. Or Waffle House Vistas, Texas. People really want that book, and I'm like, I'm not ready for that. And so I think what's really lovely about it is it's a beautiful book, if you haven't seen it. Dave is an incredible designer, and he is a collaborator and a trusted partner, so I just let him go. He comes up with the design. He's doing things that are different from the photo book tradition. Sometimes I have an image that crosses the spine. Sometimes he crops in a little bit. I'm okay with it because it tells a really beautiful story in an artistic way. And then my friends at the Georgia Museum of Art said, hey, do you want to revisit this project again? Because we would love to exhibit it, but we also really would like to have a time-based component to this exhibition. I said, sure, because you always say yes. They're like, yeah, let's do that. And I didn't really know what to do. And I thought about it, and I said, the only thing that makes sense here is to force people to look out the window for a very long time. And one of the reasons this project works is because you can sit in here and engage as long as you want and then leave. You can bring your own life experience into it and then leave. I made the image, you sit down with me, you bring your life and experience into the booth, and it becomes yours. And then I go out, I back away. But with the video, you can't do that. You sit down, you start watching, and you're waiting for it to be over. And you're waiting a little longer, and you're watching the fly move. And there's a dude going into his trunk, and you're still waiting, and it's not over. So I'm forcing you to stay into almost a space of being uncomfortable, but not fully uncomfortable was my hope. And what's interesting is, I'm going to tell you this before Kate has to rewrite the label. The first version of this video had 3 different vistas, and it was done. It was done for like 9 months because I think the exhibition got pushed back like 6 months or something. But I wasn't happy with it. And so then I just woke up one morning and I was like, no, I'm cutting it. So like I went and made more footage and cut 2 of the images, or 2 of the vistas, and only put in 1. So instead of 3 vistas at 3 minutes each, it's 2 vistas at 4.5. and it made it more uncomfortable. And that's what was bothering me. It's like it was too easy. You sat down for 3 minutes. Oh, that's nice. Next one comes in 3 minutes. Oh, that's nice. This one's just slightly too long. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to make this video because I think it adds something to the project that puts you with me in the making space, not just in the output of what you see in a photo. Oh, wait, hold on. I forgot what was next. So, Kate, how are we doing on time? Okay, that's fine. I'm just gonna keep going. She hasn't pulled the hook. So I worked on that project again from 2021 through the early parts of 2023. And then I started a new project. Y'all are pretty cool, right? You're good people, you're here on a Thursday night. I can show you what I've been working on, and I can get some real-time feedback. Okay, so somehow I have made a career of photographing some of the most photographed things and places on Earth, doing it in a compelling way, hopefully to talk about who we are as a society in a way that brings us together, not separates us by whatever division we want to talk about at the moment. I'm an optimist. I like community. I like making work about us as a society and hopefully making the world a better place, somehow, some way. I've had a project in this in my brain for a long time, and what if I make photographs of literally the most photographed place on Earth? Can it be compelling? We know it says something about who we are. We know most of us go there to seek happiness or escapism or to create memories. So can I make photographs of a place in this cycle of immersion and experience with people you love, and it becomes memory that becomes nostalgia, and then you go back 10 years later and you do it all over again with new people, or you're older, or maybe now you have kids, and it's a space that is absolutely artificial, but very real, of just honest to goodness, keyed in artistic architecture and immersion to make you feel a certain way. So that's what I've been doing. There's more people, obviously. There's more color. There's more joy. There's images like this, where I sit down at a table and photograph through a window. I don't know if they have any place in the project when I finally put it out there. For me, it feels like the past. To some friends, they're like, no, man, we really like that framing. Like, you're good at it. I don't know. But I got to get up in people's faces and make photographs of them in their personal space when they're not aware I'm in their personal space. And because the joy has to be real. It can't be fake. The people have to be really happy. And it's forcing me to do a lot of different things. I need to surprise myself visually, artistically, so that I can surprise you. And I can surprise the people that want to talk about the world we live in and why we do the things we do and go the places we want to go. And that's been a big challenge. But at the same time, when you're a creator, you're making your best work when you're uncomfortable. I'm not uncomfortable at this place. I've never actually said where I'm at, right? You guys can read. I'm not uncomfortable at this place, but I'm uncomfortable in the way I'm trying to engage with it artistically, because I want it to be a project that says the things about who we are in a positive way, not in a negative way. So thank y'all so much. I'm here all night. We're gonna invite Kate back up here, and she's got some questions for me, and then I'm gonna take questions from all of you if you have them, and I really, truly appreciate it. Thank you. We'll go to the big dog.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much, Micah. That was great to hear kind of a survey of a lot of different projects, but also to get to see you as an artist and as a person engaging with your own work. I have a few questions, and I'll try to keep it brief so that way I know there's waffles outside tempting all of us. And one of the big things that hit me when you were first starting the conversation of, you said that you're just here to ask questions and not give answers. But I want to know if you've ever been surprised by the answers others have given you in response.
That's a really great question. I think the answers I get in response are very real and down to earth. And so I appreciate having conversations on two levels. One, when we can talk about art and visual culture, because there's signifiers in these photographs and all my work. Like I try very hard to show you what I want to show you, and everything in the frame is important. Like it's very sort of like classical Baroque in that way. Like if there's grapes, those grapes are there for a reason. And I frame, like as a formalist, like a classical Baroque painter in many ways. So I like those conversations about visual culture and what it means and what we're seeing and how we can analyze it. But most of the the answers that surprise me are from people, and they're just down to earth. And it's the answers of people will email me and they'll say, this photograph, I used to sit at that exact booth in Chattanooga, Tennessee in high school every afternoon after school to work up the courage to go back to school the next day because I was an out gay man in Chattanooga. And so I didn't want to revisit those feelings, but when I saw this image, that's what I saw when I became myself. You can't comprehend that that's ever going to have that effect on somebody. Right. And that's just an example. So many people will have these very personal stories about Waffle House and experiences in their lives where Waffle House was a component. Again, not about Waffle House, it's about their life, but Waffle House is that conduit, that metaphor. And those are the ones that surprised me because I came at it as a conceptual photographer and I was just like, boom, 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 boom. But the story was in between the photographs in many ways.
I really love that, and I think that's what makes the exhibition and the book itself so powerful is it is so approachable in the way that many of us in the audience would be almost 100% positive have some experience at a Waffle House, hopefully. And if not, then tonight is your kind of pseudo first experience with our Waffle House truck.
People fly to this country and get off a plane and go, I have to go to a Waffle House. Like it's known. It's weird. There's over 2,000 of them and they're all exactly the same, but people like need that experience.
Yeah. Well, and to be engaging with such a cultural icon as Waffle House, how has that made you kind of interact with other icons? I mean, you just briefly mentioned Walt Disney World, but are there other ones that you kind of look at more critically now or just through a different lens?
I think it's through a different lens. I've questioned for years why the Waffle House framing works so well in these photographs. And I think it is that aspect of nostalgia, right? It's a roadside diner. It hasn't changed in 60 years for the most part. It's serviceable, right? The food's not actually good, but it's good when you want it, right? So like when you want Waffle House, you go to the Waffle House and it's good, but it's just eggs and waffles and toast. It's not hard to mess that up. But it's this when we're in a space that's vulnerable, we need that kind of situation, whether in our lives, at home, or on the road. We pull off the road for 20 minutes and go to the Waffle House. It's more efficient to go to the drive-thru at McDonald's. It's the same cost, right? It's not cheap to eat at a Waffle House. It's not, fast food is no longer cheap. So there's something about that experience, and it's tied to America and nostalgia and the roadside diner vibe that this project wouldn't work if I was photographing in a McDonald's or I was photographing at a Hardee's or something. That all, it wouldn't work. Even on the West Coast, it wouldn't work if I was at an In-N-Out burger. Like it's just not, there's just something about that working class vibe. Because there's two types of people, those that are comfortable in a Waffle House and those that are not. And if I tell you, oh, I don't want to go to Waffle House, I'm not comfortable there, I will judge you. Like what? Why? Like, I know it's dirty. Don't look at the fly. Don't go to the bathroom. Go to the gas station next door and use that bathroom. But that's not why we're here. So, like, there's an interesting tension there.
And I mean, that definitely makes me curious to know your experience having to look back at it and revisiting it now for the third time.
For the third time. Where's that thing? There you are.
If re-looking at this work, It is a party out there, y'all. I am holding y'all up. We will wrap this up, I
Y'all are
promise.
so polite. Thank you so much.
But yeah, to kind of bring us back to the point of being here, this is the first iteration of a multimedia component to this project, and it's premiering here. And like you said, that we didn't want to show a video of it on the slideshow in front of you. We did want to make you uncomfortable and make you go sit up there. So I do want to invite you, following this, to spend some time in our galleries. Mike, I don't know if there's any other things that you want to say about the video work itself that, looking back at the project, has made you reconsider, or are there other things left unsaid?
I think the most important part about the video and the most challenging component was making something that didn't become the focal point of an exhibition, but that had the same weight as the photographs on the wall, just a different experience. So I wanted them to enhance each other.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of like, where do I choose? I think it needs to be a really dull parking lot. I don't think I can have a lot of activity in the video. I can't be in like a major urban environment or anything like that. And it forced me to also make sure the audio was sort of dull and basic. Because most all the time when you're at a Waffle House, it's just the same experience, and it's whatever you're doing that's different. You hear the same stuff. So I wanted sort of like that, just the drone of a Waffle House. You can hear the dishwasher, you can hear the cash registers, you can hear people talking, coming and going.
Yeah.
The snippets of conversation that don't make any sense, but you hear it and you're like, wow, that's weird. I wanted that experience, but I didn't want that experience to overpower the photographs. So really making a balance was the most challenging thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Micah. I do want to open it up if there's any lingering questions from the audience. Please don't feel shy. Yes. Yes, sorry, I'm going to try to direct.
I know your focus was on the surrounding landscape, but was it a deliberate decision not to include people?
Yes, it was. So I believe the one in Mobile, Alabama, which is in the gallery, does have people in it, but they were outside, happening to walk by when I made the image. One of the things I like to do, because I'm an artist, is not give you what you want. And so in Dangerous Waters, it's about hydroelectricity and dams, but there's very few images that have dams in them. It's about the surrounding space. The dams are always sort of looming off frame. And I break that sometimes. For Waffle House, I deliberately did not want to give you the Waffle House experience you expect, which is the awesome service, the people behind the griddle, or the food in front of me. And so that's sort of lingering, oh, look, Waffle House is on the cover. I'm going to pick it up, and I'm flipping through the whole book. And someone goes, there's not an image of a waffle in here at all. Because it's not. It's a project about the built environment and what we build, and asking you to ask those questions of why we build it. So yes, it is very intentional. So if the people are outside, they're in it. Many of these photographs were made in absolutely full Waffle Houses. I just positioned myself appropriately so that you didn't see someone's shoulder, or I certainly never want to exploit someone, you know, until I'm photographing in Orlando, Florida, and I'm in their face. But in this case, it wasn't about that. And I needed that also to kind of make that conduit between me and you to sit down and look. Great question, though. Yeah.
Okay, so since Waffle House is like
There's some in Arizona, it goes up to Indiana, yeah.
but it's like a pretty southern.
Correct, it is associated with us in the Southeast. Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, because there's a lot of people that love Americana. There's a lot of people that know Waffle House. There's a lot of people that have traveled to the Southeast for or lived here for college or something, ate at Waffle Houses, and now they live somewhere else. So we have sold a lot of books. I have actually shipped prints to collectors who are just kind of like expat Southerners. Like they spent 20 years in Atlanta, and now they live in France. And like they love this book because it makes them think of home. A lot of people on the West Coast who just sort of like American culture conversations, whether or not they've been in a Waffle House. They're just like, oh yeah, Roadside Diner America, this is interesting. I vibe with that. Lots of geographers and architects love my work because like I'm saying the things that they think about, but I'm doing it visually. So it's not just the Southerners that are into this project, but I limited it to just the 11 states in the like strict Southeast because it is a Southern thing, even though it's expanded, right? I think most people in Boston feel like Dunkin' Donuts is a Boston thing, but I go to a Dunkin' Donuts in Charlotte all the time. So it's like, I'm not gonna claim it, but it's in where I live. But I think as a Southeastern person, certainly in Georgia, you claim it because it's here. Good question. Yeah. Yeah. Now I'll get to you, Michael. Yeah, they were aware. Clearly they were following me on Instagram. And what's interesting is they never gave me any issue, of course. People are always like, why don't they sell your books? Because they don't have to. They are in the eggs and waffle business, and they have a very good markup, and they make plenty of money. I learned a lot about them just in this process, but they never reached out or anything. The only email I received from anyone from Waffle House Corporate was after the piece was published online through the Bitter Southerner in 2019. And I got an email a couple days later from the same guy whose truck was in that photo that thanked me because even though there were critiques of the business model or capitalism, et cetera, in there, I never said anything negative about Waffle House or its people, or the people that eat at the Waffle House. And so because it's not judgmental toward the people, they were totally fine with it. And Waffle House doesn't do marketing, right? You don't see a Waffle House commercial on TV like McDonald's. It's just the people that like the Waffle House go. And so for them, it was the same type of grassroots marketing that they love because I'm keeping it in the zeitgeist. Yeah. They were really cool about it. Michael?
Have you connected with Stephanie Stuckey that is trying to revive the Stuckey's roadside restaurants that her grandfather?
Yes, we are Twitter friends. I'm no longer on Twitter because it's a cesspool of horribleness, but is anyone on Blue Sky Social? I miss the old, remember when Twitter was cool and like you could talk to anybody? It was great. Anyways, that's a different conversation. Sorry. Yes, she and I are Twitter friends, and we actually had multiple conversations as she was trying to kind of take back over spaces, and she was traveling to every Stuckey restaurant. And we had very rich sort of discussions about what's the role of these sort of nostalgic places in contemporary society. Because we both believe they matter in some capacity. So yeah. Anything else, y'all? Yes.
So I was curious, how do you feel social media has affected the medium of photography and sort of photography publishing?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question, and it's hard to answer because that was 2018. Like there was no TikTok. Social media hadn't been broken by the 2020 election and the pandemic and misinformation. And so I use Instagram as sort of a sketchbook where I try out different visual and formal ideas and see if anyone cares. Not as many people are on there anymore, right, for obvious reasons. And but I still am on there doing random stuff. And so for me, I used it to test run the images and just sort of engage the audience. And you know, what's crazy about social media is you don't really know who's following you. And like you don't, like it's wild. Like I remember I got a DM from, I forget their name, like major journalist that's just like, dude, I found this book through an Instagram post that had been shared, or maybe they were trying to sell a book and they just had really good algorithm on it. And like he reached out and was like, this book is incredible. And I was like, no, dude, you're incredible. You're like speaking truth to power like every night on the news. And he's like, oh no, that's just my job. Like, but we do it. Like, and it's like, it was wild. Like you just don't know on social who follows you or sees things. And that's very strange. I think in today's society, it still has a lot of power, but it's different because I think social is much more fractured, just like the media environment. So you have your followers and they're only looking at you. It's harder for a good ad to find the right people. And I just don't know much. I'm getting old, and I'm tired. And like, it's broken our brain collectively as like a world. Social media has in many ways, but it's still a useful tool, and people can still find you, and art directors of magazines and curators can still reach out on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook and be like, hey, I've been following this for a long time. Let's talk about it. So it has its place. I'm not very savvy with it anymore. I kind of pulled back in 2020. Like, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I'm slowly kind of dipping my toe back into it, and everything has changed. And that makes me feel old and a little uncomfortable in a way that I'm like, maybe I just don't bother with it. But I know I should.
First, I really like your concept about the videos. All of us are just distracted with the phone. Whatever we say, we are always distracted with the phone. But this is really good to make us aware of our environment, which is really interesting. I didn't grow up in the US, and this is really interesting because I grew up in Morocco. Restaurants are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I first saw your images in the book, it was in 2020. I was like, oh, this is really America. It's like mostly empty streets, empty parks, and restaurants and nothing. So it is like this emptiness in the images,
Yeah.
which I really like, and it really depicts the American culture. Do you have plans to take your exhibitions?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm going to rely on Kate to tell all of her friends and everyone at the Georgia Museum of Art to be like, this show is awesome. You need to have it. I think, yes, I would love to. I mean, as an artist, and many of us who are artists in this room, like, we can have that discussion when this is over with over a waffle, like how hard it is to make work and get it in front of people and put it on a museum wall and have people care about it, let alone sell it. And so I think I would love to take this work international. I think it absolutely does talk about America in a particular way that is palatable to most people. As contemporary art, I find a lot of contemporary art, particularly when it approaches something in a conceptual way, is very obtuse. And many of us who get MFAs are sort of like trained to be obtuse, to be like, oh, like, not only are you going to shut the door on the viewer, but you're going to lock it and make them have to work really hard to understand your work. And the older I got, the less fulfilled I felt when I was being obtuse on purpose. And so what I really wanted to do with this project was blow open the doors and let someone enter a conceptual artistic space through like a massive on-ramp. And next thing they know, they're like in a conceptual art project and they're talking about the world they live in instead of turning around and being confused, which has happened so much with conceptual work. And I think a lot of people, when I first started this work, they thought it was very much like Ed Ruscha, like, oh, that's funny, Micah, you're being kind of cheeky. This is going to be good. And then they realized I was serious. It wasn't cheeky like Ed Ruscha. And it wasn't meaningless like the guy I can't think of right now. What you're seeing has meaning. And I don't take myself that seriously, but my work is very serious. If that tension between those two things, I think, is interesting, and I'm kind of just trying to ride that line. That's a really good question. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I do want to thank you, Micah, and kind of wrap this up because I know
Yes, I'll
everyone's
go. Get out of here.
waiting in their seats to get one of those
Yes.
waffles out there. Thank you so much for taking the time, for inviting us to sit in the booth with you and to listen to your stories and learn more about your perspective as an artist. So thank you for sharing with us. And I do want to extend the invite for you guys to, if you haven't seen the exhibition already, please get your waffles first, but spend some time in our galleries. They're open until 9. The exhibition will be open until June 1st of 2025. So there's a lot of opportunity to engage with the work. Again, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing space with us. And Micah, thank you.
Thanks, y'all.